spaniel, or you were once a boxer, any little that gets you more fans.
Okay, that sounds
Okay.
good.
It's so my friends will be your friends.
All right, that sounds great.
Like Rodney Dangerfield. Take my friends, please.
Okay, I got some friends you can take. Some family members, some neighbors.
Well, you guys, thank you for coming to Comic Spot interview number 515. Sorry, Tony, you weren't my first.
Okay.
We're doing this for you guys at home so that you can get to know a comedian, what he's like on stage a little and what he's like off stage. And so as we talk, you're going to say, wow, we have something in common. I might want to go see him when he's in our town, or I might want to fly to Paris and see him. You just don't know where this is going to go, folks.
Right.
Kick back, relax at home. I don't care if you have pants on.
Okay.
Too old to care. Today's guest is the amazing Tony Daniel, and I'm going to read you the intro that he sent me. Sorry, 1 second. Somebody keeps trying to call me. You guys, what you do is you see if somebody's on Facebook Live before you call them. Now my whole thing is all tied up with this. Just a second, I have to tell this person I'm on the phone. Maybe this person will leave me alone right now. Okay, let's hope for that, you guys. Now you get to see me when I'm not so sweet. Okay.
And thanks for working with me on the time, because this is about the time the bill collectors stop calling. So
Do you know I'm a bill collector?
oh my goodness. Oh, that's the best trick. Hey.
I got a whole stack of them. I just don't have a letter opener.
Okay. All right.
It's as close as I get to being.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Tony Daniel. Here's his intro, you guys. Thanks for waiting, Tony. And you're, like I am very flexible. You couldn't make it till now. That's awesome. No problem. Nothing to apologize for, Tony.
Okay.
Tony Daniel started doing comedy on the back of his middle school bus in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. He paid his dues, getting kicked off the bus and spending many hours in detention until he became quite good at playing the dozens. He also learned comedic timing, reciting jokes from the legends like Pryor, Dangerfield, Murphy, and Robin Harris. He would use these jokes to overcome shyness and make new friends. This served him well once he joined the U.S. Navy and traveled the world. He started doing stand-up at Seattle Comedy Underground, and he has been a crowd favorite from Hawaii to Florida. A U.S. Navy veteran, he takes pride in performing for our nation's armed forces. Laughs on Fox, TV on Fox Network, Planet Hollywood Casino, Las Vegas Tropicana, a Casino, Las Vegas Stratosphere. And I also know he played Dangerfields and Wise Guys.
Yes.
So welcome to the stage, somebody that is hitting the country. You heard him say he's performed for the troops. So he's a fan favorite. I'm a fan of his, however you want to word it. I love him. He served in our country's military. Welcome him right now to our stage at Comic Spot, interview number 515, Tony Daniel.
Yay.
Hi.
All right. Hello, Linda. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. Where are you at? What city are you in?
I am in Seattle, Washington.
Oh my gosh. What part of Seattle do you live in? I know it well.
I live in Tukwila, right down by the airport.
Nice.
Yes.
Very nice. So Tukwila is a little area south and west of Seattle, right?
Yes, yes. It's
Yeah,
about 15 minutes from downtown.
very good. What all have you, like what has been your experience in Seattle, Tukwila during the pandemic, during this Michigan crazy time?
Well, I would definitely say Washington State is one of the states that they took the lockdown very seriously. They had people almost going door to door, making sure that you were like, "Hey, I see you outside," you know, without a mask on. Yeah, so we took it very seriously. Um, so our mayor was one of the leaders in it. He was actually speaking on a lot of the CNN, MSNBC, things like that. He's been the butt of a lot of right wing jokes, as being like kind of the lockdown Gestapo, So yeah, so it was we took it very seriously. I think it was very fortunate that when it started, it was right when the spring hit. So instead of being locked up in the house, we have a lot of trails and things that you can walk around here and ride your bike and things like that. So that made it pretty interesting. But we definitely took it serious.
What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
Uh Not doing comedy. I like, being outside. I'm an avid sports fan and a better. That's why you saw me down in Vegas. I was betting on the games. And when you saw me, I hadn't lost all my money yet. So
Oh, good.
or else it would have been a different kind of meeting. I might would have a little sign asking for a couple of dollars. But
Like if you lose 500 or more, then it's more like you do a comedic rant on stage.
yes, yes. If I lose 500 or more, it's more like a comedic cry on stage. The thing about Vegas is when you're performing in Vegas, they don't like for you to talk about losing money. So you want to say, "Hey, I won today, and I'm so happy to be here." You know, I wanted to give the slot machines a break, from paying me. So I came on stage to do a couple of jokes.
Oh my gosh. So you grew up in North Carolina in
Rocky Mount, North Carolina, a small city about 1 hour east of Raleigh, North Carolina. So the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, we're about an hour east of there.
All right. Now, was military in your family? Because that's a military area.
Yes, we had a few cousins and uncles that did the military, and then just kind of growing up, saw a lot of guys going into the military, different branches, and they made something of themselves. So as a young person, it kind of was a good impression on me. Like, hey, why don't you go out and try to be somebody and serve the country, and also see the world, and
Yes.
just sign your life over.
Yes. Just sign your life away. It's kind of like getting married.
That's funny.
So you grew up in North Carolina. At what point did you leave North Carolina?
I left right after high school when I was right at I actually signed up when I was 17, and then I was like about a month or two after my 18th birthday. So I left North Carolina and got on a plane for the first time and went to San Diego, California. And they actually asked me which area that I want to go to, and I chose San Diego, California. I use a very, very scientific study. Um, this is how old I am. I watched the David Lee Roth "Wish They All Could Be California Girls" video, and that's how I made my decision.
I played pin the tail on the German donkey.
Where did you go?
Germany, right around Frankfurt.
Oh, okay, yeah, I heard good things about soldiers going to Germany and having a good time and being very good. Anytime you can see the world, it just broadens your horizons and gives you a new understanding of people, and it forces you to rely on yourself because you're by yourself and you have to make new friends and connections and learn how to make your way.
What's the funniest thing that happened to you growing up before the military, and the funniest thing that happened in the military?
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me think. That was a good question. Um, I think growing up, I was very awkward and shy, and so a lot of funny stuff would happen. Like back in the 80s, people didn't always keep their dogs on leashes. So I got chased by and also like I kind of grew up in a rural area at first. And so a lot of people, their security system would be to leave their dogs untied. So when you would go to somebody's house or pass somebody's house, their dogs would chase you. So one time I was just riding my bike and this dog chased me, and I'm trying to pedal as fast as I can, and my pants leg get caught in the chain, and I kind of like hit this ditch and kind of like a mud puddle. So I'm like in my school clothes in a mud puddle, and I look so pathetic. And I'm like, oh man, I messed up my school clothes. And I forgot that the dog was chasing me. And so then I was like, oh man, the dog's chasing me. I looked at the dog and he just stopped. And it almost like the dog was laughing at me. Like, look at this fool. I was just saying hi, you know? Yeah, so that was a funny thing. Playing the dozens was just kind of like, giving your friends, a hard time, joking off what kind of clothes you have on, how goofy you look, your parents, anything that we can't really talk about now.
Yep.
In the bully kind of culture from back then. That was always, depending on which side you were on. If you were on the side that was getting the laughs in, it was fun. If you weren't, it wasn't as fun. But the give and take of it, it just kind of, sometimes at the time you kind of take it as offense, but also it's kind of like welcoming you into your neighborhood. That people think enough of you to give you a hard time.
Yes,
It makes
that's
you
a
improve.
great way to look at it.
Yes.
So growing up, you were awkward. So in school, were you the studious, quiet one, and then you get on the school bus and start slinging jokes?
So it's kind of a transformation. So from 0 to 11, I kind of lived in more of a rural area. And we had a school. I lived at the end of a dirt road, and the bus would drop us off, and then it would go down and turn around and come back past my house. Now, for some reason, when the bus would come past my house, drop me off, then they would go back around and turn around. I remember like me and my brother doing like stupid stuff to make everybody on the bus laugh as they passed by us. All right. So that was one part. And they were a little bit more kind. Then I moved kind of to a more city area where it was a little bit more rough. And at that point, since I was a new person, I kind of got picked on a lot verbally. And so I was more introverted. And then after a while, I kind of got a little bit more confident. So when they would say stuff to me, I would start saying stuff back. And then it kind of became more evened out, so they throw stuff to me, I throw stuff back. And then I got pretty good at it. Not that I was the best, but I got pretty good at it. Yeah.
So what was your favorite subject when you were going through school that still sticks with you today as a strength?
I always liked history and anything to do with like reading like biographies, history, geography, things like that. I'm always been fascinated by that.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how did you ever get to know Skippy Sprinkles? When I think of Skippy, I don't think of you. When I think of you, I don't think of Skippy. And yet he connected me to you. Explain this.
So Skippy is one of the most wonderful people. He always sprinkles you with affection and kindness. All right. You cannot feel down when you're around Skippy. All right. And he's very, very optimistic. So I had been doing comedy in Seattle, and then Skippy started coming around doing comedy. And we just always been pretty cool. Like we'd speak before the shows, after the shows. We've done gigs together. Skippy has ran some rooms around here, and he'd have me come through and do some shows for him, and he's opened up for me, all that kind of stuff. So we've always stayed in touch and always cheer each other on.
That's so amazing. I'm so happy that Skippy told I was standing outside of Wise Guys and Skippy said, Tony Daniel's coming. He's a veteran. You need to interview him. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Who is Tony Daniel?
You know, it was funny because the I had made the connection with the manager of the Wise Guys in Vegas, and we were texting back and forth. And he's like, "Yeah, just come on down. I'll give you a spot." And I was like, "Okay." So I had already got down there, and I was like having lunch or whatever, a couple of doors down. And so when you contacted me, I was like, "Okay, is she and Wise Guys looking at me like, what is this like Ring camera or something?" Like, I'm standing right outside. I'm not going to break in or anything, you know. So I was like, I'm like, that was fast. Like I met the manager, and then about 5 minutes later, I'm getting contacted, and I was wondering how you even knew me. Like, I mean, is she like standing beside the manager or what? I don't know. So,
No, that was the first thing. Skippy goes, "Oh, Linda, hi. Tony Daniel's coming. He's a veteran. You should interview him." Like,
no, that's awesome. That is awesome.
yes.
Yeah.
So, what was your trip to Vegas like? And then we'll go into your career. But what was your recent trip to? How good was that?
Oh, it was great. My girlfriend and I came down like on the Friday before, and she stayed for about 3 days, and then I hung out for 3 or 4 days myself because like when I'm by myself, that's when I'm hitting all the different comedy spots, like 2 or 3 different spots a night, and meeting people, sometimes going up, sometimes not, but just trying to make a connection. And it's good to kind of just go to Vegas and hang out and just, you know, even if you're not gambling, you could just people watch because you see people from all over the country, all over the world, and it's always fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, well, now I want to go into your comedy career.
Okay.
You have a list a mile long that you sent me of where you've performed. I want to hear you tell me what got you on the stage, how the first night went, and all the things that you're so proud of in your career. I want to hear this from you.
Okay. Okay. Let's get to the mansplaining. Well, so we kind of talked a little bit about my growing up, and so you know, back in the '80s when I was a kid or whatever, that was like when the big comedy boom, and you had all these Sam Kinnisons and Roseannes and Pryor and Eddie Murphy and those people, and you know, so they come out with these specials, and then you'd kind of watch them, and then you kind of remember the jokes. And like if you were the kid that can remember the joke and tell it, you were like a little mini celebrity. So like, you know, if Eddie Murphy, you know, now of course you weren't supposed to be listening to these things. So you had to make sure that you were not, you know, in earshot of any adults. And so I just kind of remember the jokes and, you know, try to do the little impersonations of, you know, Kinnison, Pryor, you know, all those different ones. And that kind of, you know, kind of got me out of my shell and got me a little notoriety. So now my friends and I, we would be on the back of the bus and we'd be telling these little jokes. And at first, the bus driver would get ticked off and
I'm
kick us.
sorry. I don't, it hurts me to hear that you were in the back of the bus.
It was by choice.
Okay.
It wasn't that long ago where I had to be back there. It was by choice. Okay. It wasn't the 60s. All right.
Some of these young people don't know what we're talking about.
Okay, so in my day, young folks, the bad kids would sit in the back of the bus so we could do things that the bus driver couldn't see. So my friends and I would be in the back of the bus and we were doing your mama jokes, your dad's dumb jokes, or you're so ugly jokes. And then we'd also do the jokes that we heard around. And so at first, the bus driver would be ticked off and she would go to the principal and have us kicked off the bus. So we'd have to walk home or we'd have to go to detention. But after a while, she realized that if we were on the back of the bus and we had all the other kids' attention, that kept all of them quiet and not fighting and throwing stuff. So she allowed us to be on the back of the bus talking our crap, you know, and then I didn't check and see if we had language restrictions on this, but we'd be back there doing our little bad kid stuff. And that was, and she would laugh too. She would laugh too. And so then it became a thing of other people from other buses would catch our bus to go against us in talking smack to each other. So you might, let's say if I was on bus 112, you'd have guys from bus 105, bus 205, like, oh, we're gonna get you. So we would just battle, joke battle, kind of like roast battle, on the back of the bus. And so that's kind of what happened. Now, when I went to the military, so like I said, shy, came out of my shell, then became a kind of a low-level juvenile delinquent, right? Okay. So it's like a caterpillar going in reverse. Instead of advancing into a beautiful butterfly, I I went from innocent caterpillar to crotchety old man, also the grouch. So now what that did for me, it kind of gave me confidence by putting other people down. Okay. An American trait, make myself feel better by putting the other person down. So now by the time I went into the military, you go into boot camp and, they cut all your hair off, give you all the same clothes. And it's people from all these big cities, from New York, Chicago, LA, Florida, whatever, all these big cities. And so everybody's even. All right. So, in our downtime, because as you know, when you're in boot camp or any time in the military, you got a lot of downtime waiting in line. Like we're going from here to there. So you're sitting here. And so we'd start doing the same thing, like everybody talking. So I was just one of the funny guys, and so that kind of carried me all the way through my, 4 years in the military, and then, kind of throughout life. And then now the places I was living, like I had never really been, it wasn't like comedy clubs or anything. I mean, back then you just thought you just saw comics on TV. You didn't know how they got started. You just knew, okay, here's this guy, he's a comic. And here, and you'd see like the Tonight Show and Letterman, different things like that, but you didn't know that, hey, there was a club that you could just go to. All right. So the first show I went to, I was living in Atlanta, and they had a comedy club, and it was, a black comedy club. And I went and saw, I think it was D.L. Hewley. And he was one of my favorite comics from watching him on TV. So my buddies and I, we wanted to go to the comedy club. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to heckle D.L. Hewley and have him heckle us back. All right. And we thought if we could get one or two on him, he, it might, it would be fun, So we went there. Yes, we were those audience members. All right. So I don't even think we made it to him because we were heckling the other comedians and they threw us out of the club. But we felt great that, we made an impact. So it was kind of like pre-internet trolling, if you will. So a few years later, I moved to Seattle, Washington, and then I'm living like in an area downtown, and it's the International District, Chinatown International District. And when I went downstairs to get something to eat, I had never really eaten any Chinese food or anything. So I was looking for just some regular American food. And the first bar I came upon was a place called Swanee's The Comedy Underground, downtown Seattle. And they had a sports bar upstairs and a comedy club downstairs. So went to the sports bar, watching the Mariners, Seattle Mariners baseball team play, talking to the bartender, laughing it up with him and a couple of customers. And it was like, hey, we got a comedy club downstairs. Do you want to go and check out the show? I was like, okay. So it just so happened that I went, and it was an open mic night. And for the people that, I'm sure your audience might know, for the people that don't know, open mic is, where you have, X amount of comedians, some of them professional, some of them just starting out, and they're doing, maybe, 5 to 7 minutes. Some are very good, some are not so good. And I'm just sitting in the audience watching the show. And I'm like, wow. And so at the end of the show, they just ask, hey, if anybody wants to come up and give it a try, let us know and you can come up. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, nobody in this city knows me. Nobody in this place knows me. I think I might try it. And I thought about it, you know what? If I don't do good, nobody knows me. I'm just going to hit that exit. As long as I can make it to that exit, I'm cool. So I just went up and told a couple of street jokes, which are, like some whatever little old comedian jokes that I knew. And I got laughs, which felt great, because I'm a Leo. And and so the MC after the show, he's like, hey man, you got good stage presence. Why don't you write your own material, which is the most important thing in comedy, write your own material and come back. So I thought about it for a couple of weeks and I, jotted down some stuff. And I came back and the funny thing was, one of the many funny things was, living in North Carolina and then moving to Atlanta, I had a very, very thick Southern accent. So I'm out here in the Pacific Northwest. Nobody could really understand what the hell I was saying. So that was one thing. Next thing was I would write these jokes and the jokes were not funny, but I would just build a joke. I was like, so my ad libs were funnier than the jokes. So I write a joke and I take this time to kind of come up with the joke. And then I'm like, oh man, that's not funny. What the hell was I thinking? And the people would start laughing. And so it was almost like I would send out these test jokes and then I would help the audience bomb on my own jokes. So that was just kind of because I didn't know anything about comedy classes or the comedy books, Judy Carter, any of that stuff. I just knew, let me try to come up with a joke like, a guy walks into a bar and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how it got started.
That's great. And since you started, you've been on some really great stages. So hit the high points, 3 or 4 of the great places you perform.
Well,
like TV and
yeah, done some, where you like do these, Laughs TV on Fox. They came through and they came through the Seattle area and they did a showcase. And then if your set was good, they would, had you sign a release and that got on the Fox TV. I got invited. Thank you. That's like the only TV that I've done. I got invited to try out for the Last Comic Standing a couple of times. That's kind of interesting because when you watch the show, you see the people and they're on the stage in the big venues, and then they show a little bit of you having to perform your jokes in front of like a big comedy club in front of 3 people, And so that was kind of uncomfortable, but if you do good there. So I didn't make it to the actual TV show, but it's still a good experience. Now,
did they come after you to be in it?
Yes. So the first time I did the thing, thank you. So the first time I happened to be traveling through the Southeast and they were in Nashville, Tennessee. So I waited outside for like maybe about 8-9 hours in like snow flurry. And then you're out there and you're freezing like, okay, you can come in now. Okay. Say you're joking. You're like, a guy walks into a bar. There's like, next. You're like, what the hell happened? And I thought about all the dates that I had that went bad. And I was like, I feel your pain, ladies. And then the next time that I got to do it, we had a gentleman who was a comedy manager here in the Seattle area, and they allowed him to kind of choose a group of comics, and we went down to San Francisco and tried out, and we were a step closer there. And then when you're dealing with the movie and Hollywood industry, you got to always be flexible for changes, especially when you're trying to get in. So they might say, hey, we're going to have you on in 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes might be 5 hours, or you're about to go on and we're going to put this guy that's more famous in front of you, and whatever. So it was still a good experience, but I didn't make it onto the actual show. So that's kind of the high low points. Now a lot of the other high points are getting to do different comedy clubs around the country or different festivals. I got some of the private shows, like I've done some veterans type shows where they'll have a reunion, and then like since I was in the Navy, so I get invited to those kind of shows, and those are always fun. Which branch were you in?
I was in the Army in 73.
Okay, so as you know, and the audience might not know, with the military is like when we join together, we go out and we kick ass. When we're not at war, we go out to bars and nightclubs and we kick each other's ass. So if you get Navy versus Marine, Navy versus Army, Army versus Marine, Air Force versus, Coast Guard versus Navy. So you don't even really need to do much comedy. You just go up like, where are my Army guys at? And then they'll start, hoorah, hoorah, hoorah. And then, where are my Navy guys at? And then,
oh God, that's funny.
Marines, Marines.
You have to be careful when you're the host of a show doing crowd work.
Yes, because like they have, you got Army versus Marine jokes that maybe go back 200 years. You got Navy versus Marine jokes that go back 50 years, and they'll just go in on each other. And then like the funnest part is after the show is some guy come up to you and say, what do you call a Marine that does it? Well, there goes 10 jokes. So you write those down, and what do you call a Navy? So but they always appreciate it. And the older gentlemen. I was in the airport leaving Vegas, and I had on my ball cap, and this gentleman comes up to me, and we're waiting to get on the plane. And he starts, got in Vietnam, and I came from a small city in Texas, and I went from Texas to Vietnam. And he said, I thought I'd die in the first week, and here I am now. I've outlived 3 wives, all that, So it's an instant connection point.
Yeah, a lot of camaraderie.
Yes. And then, to go to different states, and perform, and just seeing how your jokes work. Like, all of us, we have these jokes and we're like, okay, we think they're funny. And like, okay, if I live in Vegas and I have these Vegas jokes and they work, and then you take those same jokes and you take them over to Utah, and they might be too much for the Utah people, So to take your jokes and to have to, it's almost like a gardener where you have to weed and put this in, or a chef, like I got to add this ingredient or take this ingredient out. That's what makes it fun and challenging each night, that you're in front of a group of, people that makes it really fun and interesting. So,
well, what's the funniest thing that ever happened in your comedy career?
Oh man, let's see here. Well, let's see. How is this an adult format?
Anything.
Okay. So I'm in the middle of Montana some years back, and it's myself and another comedian. I think his name is Dan Cummins, very, very funny gentleman. That's Comedy Central, all that stuff. So we're going through Montana, and so we do this show in this little small town. All right. And well, this Montana, big state, many small towns. Okay. We do this show, and after the show, it's the townspeople, and so this lady comes up to me, and she's talking to me, and then she starts getting really, really cozy with me. And then this giant, huge mountain of a man comes over, and she introduces him as her husband. So I'm like, okay, well, then maybe she'll start trying to come on to me. But she keeps coming on to me, like rubbing up against me. And then he gets on the other side, and so I'm like in a sandwich. I'm like, oh my God. And I mean, this guy, I'm 5'10, which is average size. This guy, when I stood up, my head was in his chest, and both of his shoulders were outside of my. So I'm just in a, okay. So they're vice gripping me, and I'm like, okay, this is uncomfortable because I'm like, okay, if he knows that she's kind of coming on to me, he might kick my butt. All right. So I kind of like another person comes over and say, hey, nice show. And I kind of just slide out of this situation. All right. So then, I kind of avoid both of these people the next hour or so. And then so I get in the car with the other comic, and we're like, headed back to our hotel. He starts telling me the same story. And so basically they were looking for some people to swing with them and stuff. And I'm like, there's no way in the heck I'm gonna be anywhere in my underwear around a guy that big. So
They were trying to chuckle pluck.
yes. So that's things. Another time I got caught in a snowstorm.
Did you make up your mind which one of the two wanted you the most?
I did not. I did not make it up. I was just trying to get out of there. I was just trying to get out of there safely. Let's see, other funny things. Let's see, one time I was in Portland, Oregon after the show, great show, smoking some weed with some hot.
What club?
It was the old Harvey's.
That's where I came from.
Okay. So the old Harvey's, just smoking some weed in the parking lot with some hot waitresses, deciding to go to the strip club, me and the other comic. All right. So at Harvey's, they treated you real nice, gave you a nice meal. So I ate this big meal and drinking beer.
Side of Coke.
I didn't do the Coca-Cola soda. All right. So now I'm not really a weed smoker, So I smoke the weed and I just come up with this coughing thing. And I'm sitting there with these hot chicks trying to appear cool. And I cough and just throw up my meal. So I kind of hit it to where the waitresses didn't see it, but the other comic saw it. And so he roasted me the rest of the weekend. Like, look at Tony, he's so handsome, but watch out, ladies. He might be blowing chunks. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's a lot of them, a lot of those funny comedy things.
Did you ever get slapped across the face or tomatoes thrown at you or?
Excuse me. No, I did not get slapped. Thank the Lord. I did not get slapped. I have had a drink thrown at me on the stage, by a heckler, stuff like that. And it's, sometimes unfortunate that, from the comic standpoints, I've seen comics take it too far, and I've seen a lot of audience members take it too far. Yeah, so I think for everybody, just like, hey, let's all be respectful. And the good thing about a comedy show is usually 2 or 3 comics. So if you don't like this guy, just give it a while, and the next guy will come up. And that's why it's a good thing to have a kind of diverse show. Like, okay, have a few different viewpoints, and then you can kind of go from there. Yeah.
What's the stupidest thing that a booker did that messed up a lineup? Like, I saw a show recently where the feature blew the roof off the place, and then the host came up with a monotone voice, and there went the energy.
Yes. Well, I think the things that kind of like I kind of wonder is like, when you have a show and it's supposed to start at a certain time. So that's one thing. Another thing is having too many comics on before the headline. I mean, the headliner is usually the person that they paid to see, the most experienced comic, things like that. But, we have to realize, especially in this time, that you're asking people to sit and be quiet and be still. And that is you got about a good hour and a half to maybe 2 hours. And in this time, over these last 10 years, you're also asking them not to play with their phone. So I mean, so now if you got a headliner and this is the money guy that everybody's paid to see, and he's going to do 45 minutes to an hour. And then if you put up 7, 8, 9 comics before him, by the time he comes up, the attention span's gone. So that's one thing. Another thing that happens is some of these shows, I mean, when you go to an actual comedy club, it's usually they have an idea, of, okay, let's kind of keep it tight. Then when you go do some of these other venues, I mean, I've performed after Baby Got Back contest where they'll have 10 or 15 women twerking, and after all the guys and everybody got all charged and seen this, hey, I know you've seen these hot women doing this, now go back to your seats and be quiet and tame your hormones to hear this guy. And so that anytime you mix comedy and music, I think you want to go ahead and put the comedy and let that set the table for the music. It doesn't usually work. Like if it's hardcore rap music, rock and roll, punk rock, things like that, you want to do the comedy first and then do your music. You don't want to like have somebody listen to Slayer and have a mosh pit and then you say, hey, we interrupt your mosh pit to hear the monotone sounds of this guy, or, hey, we're, rap concert and then comedian, things like that. So that kind of makes it challenging. And then, venues like, hey, invest in the sound system, invest in the lighting. What do they say? Elevate, illuminate, and whatever they have for
don't discriminate.
Discriminate. Yeah. So sound, lighting, and the raised stage, and just step back and let the comics kind of do their thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's some advice to a brand new comedian who first month in comedy or scared to get up on stage? What would you have to say?
That's a good question. I would say maybe kind of go to some shows and check them out to see exactly how they work. All right, that's first. And then write your material, practice it. And I would say not to invite your friends and family up front. All right. And the reason is a couple of reasons. Number one, you're nervous. Number two, they come and see you and you don't do good, and they will probably never come and see you again. You could have 5 HBO specials. You sucked the first time, That's so I would say kind of do like me, just kind of be anonymous, and that way at least that the laughs you're getting instead of my mom's laughing at me like, that's my baby. He sucks, but that's my baby, Yeah, so that's a couple of things. Another thing, even myself, I've seen people and they think that they have to get drunk or meditate, whether it be weed or whatever kind of drugs or choice they use to do these things. And that is not the case. comedy, live performance comedy, especially comedy. I mean, you have to be mentally locked in to what you're doing because you got to remember all your jokes and word for word. You mess up one word, that messes up the joke, right?
Totally.
Uh, and then you also got to be checking off the audience because you're doing your jokes and you're getting that feedback instantly. So it's using all your senses, everything. It's a very good adrenaline rush, but it's intense.
Yeah.
So I would suggest not to do that. So just kind of just I'm not saying don't do anything, but do what works for you. But yeah, you can't get drunk and you know and try to do it. And
You saw me up on stage, and a comedian sitting at the second table decided to act like my jokes just weren't good enough for him, and I had to dish it to him.
yes, you did great. Yes, that was funny. Yeah.
I will slap you back if you do
Right.
that. It's a
Yeah.
mic.
Yeah. Exactly. And so yeah, that's the kind of stuff for the new comics is just like check out some shows and then you know and see if it's what you want to do and see how the comics each one handles it their own way and how they control the room. Yeah.
Here's a question, and I only ask it of professional comedians, not these up and comers like myself. I ask it of professionals like you.
Okay.
I want your best advice from your gut, what you do, nobody else, not what you read or heard. When you walk in a room and you're trying to read it, what are you looking for?
Wow, that's a good question. Okay, so you walk in. Uh,
Mhm.
what I try to do is I try to look at the audience and I kind of see how they dress, how they're reacting. I'm listening for things like if I see like 7 or 8 people come in together, and is that like what kind of celebration? Now, if it's 7 or 8 women walking together and one of them has the she's getting married thing, that's a bachelorette party. So I'm like, okay, they might be a little bit loud, they might be a little bit, tipsy or whatever, but it's a celebration. So I'm automatically going to say, okay, what kind of jokes I have for, married and stuff. And so I might, if I'm the host, give them a couple of minutes of attention, but it also lets, like, if I'm the host, it lets the feature and the other comics know, hey, there's a bachelorette party up here. So now they know that it might be some extra excitement and talking from that area of the room. All right.
Got it.
Also, you kind of want to pay attention to uh, large groups. You try to get the groups together. So if you know and you kind of overhear a celebration, you might have a joke about like, hey, it's 5 guys that just graduated from plumbing school. And so you might have a plumbing joke or two, or some military people, somebody's birthday or celebration. So you're kind of reading that kind of stuff. You can kind of feel the energy in the room too. Like, um, let's say some kind of national tragedy has happened or something in that town has happened. So you might want to steer clear of those jokes, like, okay, somebody might have a family member pass and, any kind of thing like that. So that's kind of stuff you're looking for. Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's get to the end of this because I could be here all day digging and picking your brain, and we've gone all close to an hour. So it's kind
Okay.
of a good spot to cut out. But before we do, Tony Daniel, could you please tell people where all they can find you on the internet to help your career, and where are you going to be performing?
Okay. So you can of course find me on Facebook, Tony Daniel, no S, very simple name. Instagram, comedian Tony D or comedian Tony Daniel. Twitter, Tony Daniel 7. And when Daniel is no S, performing. Let's see. This Sunday, I'm going to be in Seattle. Uh, you have to go on my different things to find those things. Next week, Yes, Seattle. I'm going to be at the Soul. It's like a Soul Train comedy type of deal. So if you go on my Facebook, you could check it out. I have the flyers up. Also next week I'm going to be at the Auburn Theater in Auburn, Washington, which is a little south of Tukwila, and then I'm going to be May 14th at the Renton Civic Theater. I'm
No
heading.
way.
Yep, right downtown Renton.
I lived right there on
Oh,
3rd.
okay. Yep, right on 3rd. Yes, yes. So I'm going to be there on May the 14th. June 26th, I'm going to be downtown Portland, Oregon at the Abbey. I'm going to be headlining there. That's a Saturday. So that's kind of the upcoming schedule. May 6th, I'm going to be up in Arlington, Washington. May 3rd and 4th, I might be back in Vegas at Wise Guy. So that's a Tuesday and Wednesday.
All right.
Yeah, so we'll get to hang out again.
Yes. Oh, that's so fabulous. Now, May 21st, we're having a military show at LA Comedy Club. You might get a hold of Leah Mendez in case she gets any changes in the lineup to have her include you.
Okay, yeah.
It's going to be huge.
Yes, that's great.
I'll tell your name too, so don't.
Okay.
So I'm going to go off Facebook, you guys, and I want to sit here and talk with Tony real quick because a whole lot of what he said I have in common with him, but I don't like to interrupt and say that except maybe once a time in an interview, but I got to tell him things. We got connections we don't even know.
Oh, that's great. And
Let me go. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to my YouTube and go follow Tony Daniel.
Okay.
1 second here. I'll go turn this off Facebook.